So, roguelites. Big fan? What about things that are free? Well, if you've answered yes to at least 3 of those 5 questions, you might be in luck, because I've got a free roguelite just for you. If not, well, you're welcome to just hang out, I guess. Could really use the company, as I'm honestly not entirely sure where I am. Rabbit Hole, the name of a game that might ring some bells if you're one of the many people who've seen my incredibly popular video on niche, unknown, underrated, hidden indie gems, in which I briefly mentioned Rabbit Hole because another game by its developer, Shortcake Cafe, was one of the aforementioned niche, unknown, underrated, you get the idea. At the time of finishing that video, I had roughly 5 hours in the game, and really hadn't put much effort into it if I'm being completely honest. Just thought it was neat. I then proceeded to bump that up to 40 or so hours in the span of a couple days, and the only reason it's not currently more is because I had to tear myself away from repeatedly attempting incredibly challenging achievement runs in order to start writing the script you're now listening to, which is a lengthy way of saying the game is good. But don't take my word for it, take my many, many words for it, which I'll be speaking now. At this very moment, Rabbit Hole is a self-proclaimed tough-as-nails roguelite, which might at first seem like an exaggeration given its simple yet charming pixel art visuals and gameplay, but I can confidently say that's an accurate description. The game is really hard, or I'm really bad. Despite there only being 4 rather short floors to go through and subsequently only 4 bosses in total, it still took me about 8 hours to just barely manage a win through mostly good RNG. Though to be fair, it might have taken me a few hours to really lock in. But let's not get too far ahead. In this game, you'll take on the role of a girl whose real name is unknown. One way or another, while riding a train, she'll fall victim to what has been dubbed the head-popping phenomenon, in which the top of one's head goes... Or maybe her head just does that, I don't know. Either way, she falls into the titular rabbit hole, which is a rather strange place. Starting off within a train car, she encounters a peculiar woman on a Vespa who rather suddenly names the girl Disc and provides a jacket that comes with a mask and rabbit ears that Disc just puts on. Really didn't have to, but I respect the commitment to the fit. A short tutorial later, we drop down into Rabbit Hole proper, armed with a dinky little pistol, a scuffed rifle, and a baseball bat. And thus begins the gameplay loop. Every single run starts right here, though of course where that run ends is entirely up to your skill and luck, and your hubris in believing you can outrun the encroaching inevitability of ceasing to exist. In terms of roguelites, it doesn't exactly reinvent the wheel, traveling room by room, floor by floor, fighting enemies and defeating bosses with the variety of weapons you find throughout your run. The runs themselves are also quite short. Even if you're taking your sweet time, you're unlikely to even hit 15 minutes. Much like many other roguelites, your health is also quite limited, often in the single digits, with every single attack from enemies dealing the same single pip of damage. I quite enjoy when games do this, as it puts an even stronger emphasis on dodging and avoiding damage on your way to a boss fight just to be able to tank an extra hit or two. This constant need to jump and dodge attacks pairs nicely with the claustrophobic nature of each room, which are all the same small size, even for the boss fights. The 2D aspect of the game also means you're limited to the floor and any platforms to get around, further restricting your play space compared to the traditional top-down or isometric view many roguelites go for, meaning there's no sidestepping enemies. Bit of a problem, given the abundance of contact damage. What's contact damage? Well, you see, it occurs when you get too close to an enemy. Like this. Just about every enemy and boss, with 1 or 2 exceptions, will inflict pain by simply being in close proximity. They take their personal space bubbles very seriously, even if they put you in there themselves. I'd be willing to bet that more often than not, you'll die to contact damage. What I mean is more than likely a majority of your deaths will be accidentally jumping or rolling directly into a stationary target. or because the melee attack moves you forward ever so slightly. Speaking of melee, there's a surprising amount of skill to be learned in that regard. At the start of a run, you'll find that your melee packs quite the punch, both in terms of damage and in knockback, making it useful for giving yourself a bit of room to breathe or just eliminating the threat outright. But it doesn't stop there. As it turns out, hitting something with a baseball bat that's rapidly moving towards you is a great way to make it stop doing that. Doesn't matter if it's the assorted sentient fruits and vegetables or the flowery swordswoman rushing towards you. All must kneel before blunt force trauma. Of course, even when armed with a sturdy bat and a branch that shoots out a burst of leaves, it can feel daunting taking on the rabbit hole by yourself. So lucky for you then that there's mostly friendly NPCs to encounter on your way down. One of which is the Vespa lady, who turns out to be a shopkeep who you'll find just a few rooms before the boss fight on each floor. She sells the other 98% of the milk, which naturally has healing properties, along with a creme brulee that'll permanently buff your damage. What is she putting in this? There's also, of course, a random firearm being sold, along with gasoline? Specifically on floor 2 and nowhere else. But that'd cut into my milk budget, so I guess we won't know what that's for. Yet. But hey, the flirting comes free of charge. Now, the rest of the NPCs won't be quite so consistent, appearing randomly throughout a run on any of the floors. You've got this strange, supposedly French-Canadian, dubbed the beggar, who speaks in some weird ancient language. No, that's not a jab at French, it's not French. It translates into French. He's kind enough to offer up coins in return for chowing down on any weapon we might bring him. Something French cuisine. Am I right? There's also this orange-haired individual named Belle. Not much to say about them, but their vending machine does sell random guns. Vending machine in America. Am I right? If you feel like your nation's pride has been directly and unfairly slighted by those two previous witty remarks, please file a complaint down below, and we'll do our best to consider your feedback. Thank you. Up next on the average rabbit hole NPC is that a slot machine? Dear God, I fucking love gambling. Remember, your odds are always 50-50. It's either win or lose and nothing else. 100% of all gamblers hit it big 60% of the time. Whoa, wait. Hold on. The price of gambling is my health? It's just like real gambling. Fun fact, the more money you put in, the higher chance you have of winning. This is 100% real and true. Moving right along, we've got ourselves Big Fluffy Moth Gal. I don't care what she's selling, I'll take it. Upgraded weapons and weapon upgrades that cost my health bar? Works for me. Go ahead. Take my blood. Call me your little blood bag. I don't care. Sorry, that was uncalled for. Blood money aside, there's yet another baddie, and she's got a dog. Play her game and shoot her targets. Perform well enough and you'll get more money than you put in. Getting near the end of the NPC list, we've got the Bunny Barista. She doesn't talk much, honestly not sure if she can, but she does serve up some delicious pastries. Just please don't fire off any rounds in her little cafe. Those ears are sensitive, you know. And finally, one could say I saved the best for last. Or the worst. Could be either, really. The dealer. Dealer? I hardly know her. So what does this devilishly handsome salesman deal in? Well, pure, unfettered RNG garbage. More specifically, blessing you with a blessing and cursing you with a curse. Increase weapon damage? Sure thing, but enemies are now invisible. Lower shop prices? You betcha. But you're physically incapable of moving to the left. A fresh new pair of snazzy shades? Alright, but God himself will repeatedly attempt to smite you down. The list goes on. Of course, not all the negatives are completely run-ending, just the funny ones, like exploding at a random moment. And remember, you always gamble on the die instantly deal. Doesn't matter what the benefit is, just do it. Do it for me? Okay, maybe not, that's a bit weird. Now, the funniest of the deals are the ones that cancel each other out. You run faster, but your speed is halved. Double ammo on all guns, but you have less ammo. Games. Infinite games. But no games. This is a subtle nod to the fact that the dealer is a fucking awful salesman. And with that, I think I've reached the point where I've discussed as much of the game as possible without heavily spoiling certain gameplay aspects and lore. This would be an excellent time to go play the game right now, as it'll only cost you your time. Quite a bit of time. But if you'd rather stick around, I won't keep you waiting. As briefly mentioned in the opening by Shopkeep, for one reason or another, Disc has lost her heart, which is bad, so we'd better go find it. After turning Miss Magnolia, the flower room sword lady, into lawn clippings, the next stop is the sewers, the inhabitants of which are about what you'd expect. Trash cans, a particularly wet radish, jellyfish and mermaids. Wait, what? Bit odd, but surely the boss of this floor is more accurately sewer-themed. The Tank Twins are a challenging fight, where you'll have to split your attention between the two of them if you want to win. No, don't skip over it. How'd they even get that thing down here? Who flushed away this goddamn heavily armored combat vehicle? Confusion aside, this is a good time to mention that if you manage to successfully defeat any of the bosses without taking damage, you'll be gifted a cake that's likely chocked full of painkillers and permanently increases your max health. More health to further your gambling addiction or happily give away to the fluffy moth lady. After you've tanked the two twins and avoided becoming lost from historical records, you can drop down into the ballrooms. These lavish interiors are full of your typical, distinguished partygoers, like a shy little ghost with a party hat, or a straight-up skeleton. I think that little creature over there has a shotgun. Oh, and the radish is no longer wet, but instead on fire and prone to spontaneous combustion. The boss of this floor is a bit more in theme, being Lady Stradivarius, who fittingly wields a violin and deploys bullet hell tactics with a relentless storm of fireballs, swords, and crossbombs. These would often be included during violin recitals to add visual flair, so it's a cool reference to see. But don't let all that visual flair distract you from the fact she has cat ears, making her the second cat girl in the game, right after Shopkeep. Her fight might seem intense at first, but the lack of contact damage goes a long way in making it relatively easy to overcome, and after doing so, it's down once more, down to the lowest floor, down to the sanctuary. This final floor takes place in a single hallway of a grand cathedral that stretches onwards, only broken up by the occasional NPC encounter. Many of the enemies encountered here are weird, distorted versions of those previously fought. The shy little ghost has become a bit of a shy guy, and the jellyfish has one too many pairs of teeth. But persevering gives us one last stop to shop. A brief respite before the final boss. There's also this short corridor that I half expected to fight some funny skeleton, but there's only this pile of scrap metal. Either way, the final boss within this great cathedral is fittingly a nun named Yomi. Less fitting is the massive spear she'll be using to turn me into a rabbit-eared shish kebab. Better study hard to learn those attack patterns, and I'm not just talking about hers, because you'll be traveling this route quite often, so any extra health you can get goes a long way. And with enough perseverance and drive, you'll be victorious. You've overcome adversity, so stand proud. Whoa, wait, I didn't mean you. That's right, there's a second phase, and it's even harder than the first. Be sure to say hi to Shopkeep for me on your way back down. But much like before, through trials and tribulations, your suffering will bear fruit. Disc retrieves her lost heart, and then, no, don't you dare get back up. I swear to God, if there's a phase 3, I'm going to lose it. Oh, thank God. I mean, for a second there I thought there'd be a third phase. Wait a second. Oh, for fuck's sake, this psychopath wearing a nun cosplay doesn't know when to quit, summoning what I can only guess is the corpse of some dead ancient god. And for the record, this skeleton isn't nearly as funny, but at last, finally. Oh, you get it by now. Boss bested and all that. Totally could have been faster though. Thank God Shopkeep was here to take the wheel, by the way. I mean, given how she takes the train, I get the feeling that Disc doesn't have her license, so it would have been a bad idea to let Disc drive. Anyways, after a heartfelt goodbye, Disc has a train to catch. She pops out of her own busted open skull, back home, if you can call it that. It's hard to say if she's gotten better, or if she truly ever will, but for now, she'll keep living. And with that, you've unlocked the Shopkeep as a playable character. Don't tell me you thought that was it. Of course not. There's multiple unlockable characters, starting off with the ever-charming Shopkeep. And don't worry about her shop during the runs, she's got herself a cute little helper. Shopkeep's entire gimmick is basically going band for band with the entire rabbit hole ecosystem. Mo money means mo damage, though she does drop coins like she's Sonic the Hedgehog. If you act now, Shopkeep will personally deliver your ass beating in 4 quick and easy installments. But on the topic of her shop, what is the deal with that gas can? And what's with the price? I mean, that's That's pretty accurate actually. Unfortunately, purchasing the gas doesn't unlock the super secret Vespa mount, but it does trigger the secret boss fight on floor 3. Shed is some chainsaw-wielding, mask-wearing crazy lady, but if you manage to beat her, that's yet another character unlocked. Shed is heavily melee-focused, having a significantly stronger and faster melee that scales more with damage buffs, along with a powerful dash, and the ability to pogo off of enemies' heads. So better rev up that chainsaw, cause these bosses are hungry for a nice chopped salad. Speaking of being diced up, there's this hunk of metal down on floor 4 who's seen better days. I wonder what happened. If only there were some hints or clues we could follow in order to piece together this mystery. Well, you're in luck, because if you purchase the 2 Moko reports for a small fee and roughly 7% of your body weight in blood, you'll be able to read them via the library. And don't worry, I'll cover the library later. From these reports, you can roughly retrace the steps of Moko bots V1 and V2, both of whom politely offer up their limbs, or what's left of them. Now comes the hard part, as you've only just beat floor 2 and both your weapon slots are currently occupied. Enjoy getting through floor 3 and a majority of floor 4 with only melee, and whatever pea shooter the random weapon chest on each floor provides. Either way, with a click and a clack, you've got yourself one fully functional Robo-Gal, unlocking Moko, or specifically Moko V3, as a playable character. So, what's her gimmick? Well, let's just say this smart toaster right here really likes playing Sekiro. Finally, the enemies can be on the receiving end of contact damage. This also means throwing yourself at any threat before hitting a parry is a viable strategy, and there's really no limit to what can be parried. Now, I'd love to cover why all these robot girls are running around in the rabbit hole, but that'll come later. This video is already getting pretty long, so I've got to rush through the last few characters. And speaking of rushing, if you're fast enough and beat the game in under 12 minutes, you'll unlock the incredibly fast, anxiety-riddled delivery girl named Snail. She uses her rapid momentum to launch herself at enemies in the most diabolical hip check I've ever seen, the damage of which scales with her current speed, which can only reach its peak through weapon recoil or grappling onto enemies. Her iconic catchphrase is also, "Gotta go fast or UPS is going to put me in the ground," which is a reference to the fact she has to complete each floor within a limited amount of time. Otherwise, she'll start burning money to save time until it's eventually too late. Now, you might have already noticed, but nearly all the playable characters are girls. I say nearly because there's still one left, unlocked by beating the game as everyone else. Who is this super secret and possibly incredibly strong character? Well, it's Mr. Bones, and he fucking sucks in every single way. He starts off with pitiful damage, an embarrassing dodge roll if you can even call it that, and his slightly longer melee range is offset by how slow it is. And did I mention he's got a single chrome of health that can't be increased through any means? But on the bright side, drinking milk gives him a damage buff, and his single health point makes some of the dealer's curses ineffective, like double enemy damage or hidden health bar, is what I'd say if I was trying to gaslight you and myself into believing he isn't utter garbage. I've wasted hours, and my desperation only continues to grow. Deluding myself is my only choice. Speaking of delusion, do not look up the Mr. Bones entry in the Rabbit Hole wiki. It's not worth it. Fun little side note, all the characters have a cool alternative costume that's unlocked after beating the game with them. Pretty neat little addition. But of course, these characters are more than just their gameplay gimmicks. Most have a story to tell, lore to unravel and reveal. Here is your final spoiler warning, because we've reached the part where I yap about the lore of Rabbit Hole for an undetermined amount of time. So let's go ahead and dive down into this rabbit hole. Sorry, that was stupid. So, the rabbit hole. What is it? Good question, but first we'll have to discuss how one actually ends up here in the first place. If it wasn't already clear, it seems that an overwhelmingly strong emotion, most likely a negative one, can drive one to suffer from the head-popping phenomena. Be that the crushing feeling that life is simply meaningless, the stress from being pushed to the edge while jumping from job to job, rushing to deliver letter after letter, being a used car salesman, the heartbreak of being ghosted by a girl you planned a date with, or just pure devastating melancholy shared with another. Allow me, if you will, to tell a short story. a story of two sisters who lost their parents at a young age, requiring the older sister to become the guardian for the younger of the two. But despite this tragedy, they stood strong, becoming each other's strength through hardship, laughing and sharing memories together, like baking an incredibly scuffed lemon cake from their mother's recipe book, or eating popsicles out on the balcony to beat the summer heat. The two grew up together, the younger sister studying her head off, graduating from high school with her sister Yom Yom's support, a cute little nickname for her big sis. But tragedy always seems to have a nasty habit of being a repeat offender. Her rejection letter from her dream institution arrives. Her sister does her best to hide it, but sooner or later they end up embraced in each other's arms on that same balcony. The sister breaks, doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, doesn't leave her room, and eventually her head breaks too. One way or another, the older sister also finds herself within the rabbit hole, but not quite. It's nothing more than a desolate, snowy expanse that stretches on endlessly. She builds up the rabbit hole, making it into what we know, building up the floors and rooms we traverse. Perhaps, in some twisted, distorted way, it's all just to keep her sister safe, to make sure she's never hurt again by locking her up in the depths. Now, this pair of sisters can actually be encountered in-game, and you're likely already quite familiar with the older one. At least, her attack patterns, that is. A girl dressed up as a sister of the cloth, Yomi. Does she have some motive for stealing the hearts of any poor soul who has the misfortune of dropping down into the rabbit hole? It's hard to say, but speaking of dropping down, and getting back on topic to the younger sister, there's a gameplay mechanic I've neglected to mention. After reaching the ending of the game, you can skip your ride and instead dive back into the rabbit hole, effectively looping and doing it over again, with each consecutive loop buffing the enemies as well as applying debuffs like weapon degrading or increased damage, along with a new threat, which we'll get into later. What's important to know is that after beating the game, a new item appears in the shop on floor 3, a halo. You might have a solid guess as to what this does, but it's not as simple as the gasoline. There's no new boss fight on the 4th floor, at least, not yet. Looping with the halo will see it begin to degrade until your second trip through floor 4 is interrupted by Catalyst, a girl, or what remains of one. Little more than an empty, broken shell, having forgotten her name, her appearance, herself, and of course, her older sister. This is what's left of Mina, buried in the depths of the rabbit hole where she can't be hurt ever again. Except for, by a girl with rabbit ears and an incredibly powerful shotgun that runs off gold coins. This is unfortunately all that's really known about the tragic tale of these two sisters, but that's far from the end of what's to be discussed, starting with the main gal of this game, name still unknown, Disc. In a way, you could say that she's the catalyst for many other characters' stories. Too soon? Disc, through one way or another, becomes dissatisfied with life and locks away her emotions, leading to her head popping and causing the events of the game as we know it to play out. Meeting Shopkeep along with the others, maybe piecing together a broken bot, and eventually, after multiple attempts, beating Yomi to retrieve her lost heart, which grants her access to the train which seemingly can't be taken by those without it. She returns to life, determined to keep on living as signified by her marking yet another day gone by on her torn-up calendar in her empty room. But we're not done just yet, as there's a strange door beneath the library that's locked up. As you rack up achievements, more of the locks are undone until you reach 40, which is far from easy. Entering inside reveals Disc, possibly her past self, or the manifestation of the emotions she's mentally locked away. There's no judgment, no blame placed for keeping all her feelings bottled up. Just understanding, and praise for working so hard and coming so far. Whoever or whatever she is proud of what she's become. And that's the end of Disc's story. So let's talk about Shopkeep. After getting ghosted by a girl she was supposed to have a date with, her head made like a weasel and went pop, after which she seemingly decided to just set up shop and start a new life down here. Maybe she thought there wasn't anything worth returning to. She also gets to know the other rabbit hole inhabitants and gets a mostly functional Vespa from the dealer. Her most impactful encounter though is likely with Disc, or more specifically watching Disc persevere and grow stronger, eventually escaping the rabbit hole. This motivates Shopkeep to pursue her own heart, but unlike many others, it's not in Yomi's possession, which requires her to delve even deeper into the depths of the rabbit hole in her search. Makes you wonder just how long she's really been down here. Maybe one day we'll hear more about her journey. Pivoting over to a certain anxiety-riddled delivery girl, Snail's story is quite short. Being repeatedly fired from jobs and rushing about delivering letters overwhelmed her with stress, banishing her ass to the rabbit hole. Desperate to deliver on time, she rushes through the floors, eventually retrieving her heart from Yomi. But it's too late. Her delivery, that is. And she's fired once again. However, she's then approached by a certain chainsaw-wielding woman in a classy suit, who Snail was previously fired by. This time with a new business opportunity, and some snazzy new shades. So, let's talk about Shed. But first, we need to talk about the other method of entering the rabbit hole that doesn't involve getting your head popped open. It involves finding somebody else with their head popped open and taking a dip into the brain goop. For example, hypothetically, a shady salesman, who you may or may not have played a part in getting his head popped. It's rather ambiguous. Hypothetically ambiguous, of course. Entering using this method seemingly doesn't cost your heart, but you're also nonetheless still dropped in at the top of the rabbit hole. After taking advantage of this, Shed becomes a self-proclaimed expert on the place, which catches the attention of a certain desperate scientist. We'll get there soon, but to put it simply, Shed is offered a large sum of $1 million if she can either retrieve the scientist's lost daughter, or a smaller but substantial sum if any evidence of her, like writing or clothing articles, can be found. Still keeping it simple, Shed finds a fluffy jacket worn by the daughter, cashing it in for enough money to start her own business dubbed Shed Industries, where she advertises herself as a mind mercenary, diving back into the rabbit hole to search for lost loved ones. Refunds not guaranteed. She offers a role in this company to Snail, and also she got those shades by kicking the dealer in the balls before leaving the rabbit hole, as if that poor guy hasn't had enough things popping already. Now, let me tell you another short story. One about a girl by the name of Livia Valora. She's noteworthy as small snippets of her journal entries recording her own trip through the rabbit hole will rarely drop from certain enemies, which can then be read in the library. Just like this unfinished Yuri novel, her journal entries start off rather cheerful, and weirdly enough, she feels overwhelming joy upon first entering the rabbit hole. While exploring floor 1, she encounters one of the little radish creatures, or more properly known as a bow. She dubs it Leaf, carrying it around in her hoodie as she comes across the other enemies, even encountering Magnolia, who attacks her. Livia manages to later get past by tossing a bomb berry at her before jumping down the glowing hole that she supposedly felt drawn to, like it was calling her. Day 4, or 5, is relatively uneventful, as what she's dubbed the sewers are quite boring to explore, besides the fish woman whose song physically made her chest hurt. And she's been feeling lightheaded. Maybe she hit her head on the way down. Later on though, Leaf ends up producing seeds. She plants them but doubts they'll grow in these conditions. Livia has introduced an invasive species into the sewer system. While down there, she gets her jacket stolen by 2 bullies in a tank. God knows how they got that down there. Cutting her losses, she decides to descend deeper down yet another hole, finding herself in what she describes as a beautiful manor. It's also good to note that at this point there's apparently been too many days to count, with her journal entries just including a word, like mean. Frowny face. On the day she met the Tank Twins, she once more introduces more bows into yet another ecosystem while enjoying the warmth of the fireplace. A fireplace that sets the bows on fire, attracting the attention of Lady Stradivarius, who's justifiably upset, chasing Livia further down into the rabbit hole. She's likely hit floor 4 at this point, feeling distraught from her actions and the trouble she's unintentionally caused. Then, her next day is titled Barren. Leaf is gone and she's seemingly somewhere else, somewhere cold and desolate, aimlessly wandering. The final bit of the journal you can find is different. It's written as if by someone else, someone who just woke up in a cold, desolate place to find a journal in front of them. They dubbed the owner of this journal Husky, as that's apparently what's written on the front, and with no other real options, they begin to wander. Wondering if maybe they'll find this Husky down here, and why there's a leaf in their pocket. Unsurprisingly, this is still likely Livia, suffering from something like amnesia down in what one might dub the Abyss, that endless frigid field of snow briefly mentioned on occasion. Now, in her journal, Livia had expressed how her boss and co-workers insulted her for being a slummy city girl, and how people in general ignored her, likely what led to her head popping and all that. But there's at least one person who cares for her, being Dr. Valora, world-class researcher in AI technology, and more importantly, a grieving father who's desperately trying to get his daughter back. To do this, he founded the Moko Initiative, a series of robots sent into the rabbit hole, likely through his daughter's own head, to study this strange realm and hopefully find Livia, along with any other poor lost souls. The success of V1 and V2 was not much, losing to Magnolia and the Tank Twins respectively. V3 is much the same with Yomi on the 4th floor. Or was, as after being pieced together by a peculiar rabbit ear-wearing girl using old, borrowed parts, she manages to reach the train. However, despite her condition, she cuts her ride short, diving even deeper, eventually reaching the frigid abyss. Her components are badly damaged, but she miraculously finds Livia. Whether or not she's dead or alive is unknown, as Moko's health check protocol is broken or missing. She desperately attempts to return to the entry point, but unfortunately, she doesn't make it. Dr. Valora, of course, continues his search, but it's clear that even since the beginning, he's felt it's hopeless. Feeding the Frenchman the Moko V1 head provides a book dubbed Victory Protocol that's seemingly a message for one Livia V. Husky, reassuring her that this robot that's assumedly found her is safe and here to save her. The end of this short snippet is Dr. Valora expressing his doubts that his lost daughter would ever read these words he's writing. His desperation is further highlighted when he seeks out Shed, due to Moko V4's production taking longer than expected, not wanting even a single day wasted. This contract also confirms that Shed found the jacket from the Tank Twins before Moko V5 was finished, receiving her payment. Speaking of Moko V5, in the book, What Lies Beyond Our View, the Doctor expresses his thoughts on this twisted purgatory that he's supposedly been researching for decades at this point. A realm filled with monsters, distorted people, and something else. An entity that Dr. Valora was only just made aware of through tests with Moko V5. Something that seemed to always linger just out of frame, shrouded in shadows. It pursued the bot, seemingly engulfing everything behind it in darkness, a repeating pattern where everything is swallowed up, yet put back into place upon a new entry into the rabbit hole, a reset, cleansing any flaws and impurities, anything that doesn't belong. Here's what we know about the properties of the rabbit hole. Anyone who's lost their heart, such as Disc, Shopkeep, and Snail, resurrects right back at the beginning every time, an in-lore reason for repeat runs. This safety net doesn't extend to inanimate objects like the Mokos or anyone retaining their heart, such as Shed. This canonically means she's simply just that good. Of course, being heartless isn't a total positive, preventing one from leaving the rabbit hole and also leading to the decay of one's memories of the real world, likely what happened to the human bosses and what we read of Husky. This process can also supposedly be slowed by an exceptionally strong will or survival instinct. Now then, this entity is an exception to all that. This Reaper, as you could call it, will stalk the players upon looping, only getting faster with each loop as it engulfs everything in its path. In lore, death by the Reaper is more akin to simply ceasing to exist, or never even existing at all, regardless of if you have a heart or not. This is confirmed by Dr. Valero when he's going through his notes. During the beginning of his research, he visited a grieving family whose only child suffered the same fate as his own. At the time, he promised he'd do his best to find their son, yet now he had no memories of this boy, and when returning to the family, they claimed to have never had any kids. Despite this terrifying discovery, in some twisted way, it gives him hope, because he still remembers her. And that's the extent of the lore as we know it, or as best as I can guess going off the game and the wiki. There's absolutely nothing else. What's that? Mr. Bones? Do you seriously think that joke character who's little more than a challenge run given legs, that pitiful, pathetic little collection of bones, has lore to him? Well, you'd be right. He turns into the Reaper. Anyways, congratulations for reaching the end of this video. I'm shocked you sat through all that lore. I'd like to thank you for watching, and to thank the developers for putting together this lovely little roguelite. By the way, if you still haven't played it, what the hell are you even doing? It's completely free. Also, if you'd like to support these developers, consider picking up the Rabbit Hole art book. It's got some real neat facts about the game, its characters, and the lore. Now, where was I? Oh right. Speaking of support, I'd like to thank my generous patrons, with extra special thanks to Rody, Mir Loon, Yuval, Michael Bradley, Beano S, EB Sprite, Blue Stop Sign, Lavok T. Skellerman, and Sven. They get access to these videos a day early, exclusive updates, clips, polls, watching me crash out, suffer, and recover from creative burnout, and more. If that interests you, or you'd simply like to support the channel, do consider joining, though it's certainly not required. And if nothing else, like and subscribe. Until next time.